So one of the demos today is a project that Terry had created a while back that he had me help him on. And the idea was that he wanted to be able to have um, a table cell change color depending on a value. So these were immunizations, and if the immunization date, the expiration date had passed, he wanted the cell to turn red. So we use the JavaScript injector external module to do this. We had to do a little tweaking. It doesn't just, uh, we had to set up the fields in a certain way to be able to use the JavaScript injector. And so I'll walk you through that right now. It only fires, the code only fires when the form loads. So if I was to add a new immunization here, and set it for yesterday, which would trigger the coloring. Um, it won't um, it won't update as if I leave the field. It'll only update if I save and stay or load the record. So there are ways to make things fire when fields change, but the code that we used was fine with just having it when the record loads because they just need to see it when the record loads. So in the designer, Terry has all of these as embedded fields, and the expiration date is the cell that we're looking at. So if we go into yeah, it's the first one here. If we go into the header here, or the source code, what you'll see here is that this is the row that we're wanting to make changes to. This is the cell. So Terry has a background color that he's assigning to it, but I've added this ID value because we need a target for the JavaScript injector to find the cell in the code. It doesn't have a specific value by default. So if we look at, um, let me close this and I'll show you in the form. If I right click on this cell and go to the inspect in Chrome, or sorry, yeah, in Chrome, you'll see here that it has the hierarchy of the HTML tags, and this is the date field here. And we could target the field, but not the actual table cell, because the table cell is this right here, this table data cell. And without this ID, if we took this ID out, you can see here, this is something I'll show you later. This is a class, but you can ignore these two things. So without those two values, the only thing that's in this table data tag is the background, the styling for the background. So there's no identifier that JavaScript can target that separates this table data cell from this table data cell. So the first thing we had to do was add the ID for each one of these cells. So that way we can create this code that targets it and then changes the color. The next thing that we had to do was create a status field for each one of these. And you can see here there's like 10 sets of these fields. So you can put in 10 immunizations and expirations. So for each one of these, we had to create a status field. And that's the second part, because that's giving us the sort of the check value that we're using the logic for to say whether that field needs to be one color or the other. So, and it's a hidden field. And what it is we're taking the expiration date and we're using the date diff function and we're comparing that to today. So if the expiration date is before today, then it's less than 0 because it's kind of coming up to today as it's negative in the past. And then once it's on today, it equals 0. And if it's expired, if it happened in the past, then it's going to be greater than 0 because the today's date is greater than the expiration date, if that makes sense. So this is the code that we use for this. And this is just one of the cells. This is just the top one here, this expiration date 1. So you would just copy this for each one of these and change the values. Like for example, in here, for this ID value, because the IDs have to be unique. This one says, you know, cell -2, and then it's cell -3, cell -4 for all these. So I'm just going to show you for cell -1. So what this is doing is this function says that when this window loads, the REDCap window loads, if the expiration status, this is the cell, this is the field value. So if we go back to this, this is the input box with the date. And what we're doing is we're looking at the status. So this one's for the date. The status is hidden, but it's the same sort of thing where it's this table data and it's the field. This one's for the date, but what we're looking at is the actual, we're basically targeting the value of the expiration status. So if that's the date diff function. And if it's greater than 0, then what we want to do is we want to change the color to red for this cell. And this is how we're targeting it, is with this ID value. So we're basically saying that for this table cell, we want to apply this CSS value, background color is this red. If not, if this value is not greater than 0, meaning that it could be today or anytime in the future, so it hasn't expired, then we want to just have it as the regular color. And this is what it would look like for all the fields. So what you would do is just within this, you would just basically copy this text block again. So I'm just going to paste the whole code here so you can see it. Because what it's going to do is when the form loads, it's just going to plug through each one of these fields. It's going to check the first row, and if that's fine, then it's going to check the second row and then the third row. And if those values don't have any, those fields don't have any values, it's just going to be ignored. So that's the code for the to change the color. So the first thing we need to do is go to our external modules and we click on manage. And if you've never done the external modules, the first thing you want to do is enable a module. So you would click that, and then in the search, you would type JavaScript. It's not going to show up here because it's already enabled, but if it was disabled, it would pop up and we'd be able to select it. So now it's already enabled. We have the REDCap JavaScript injector here. We go to the configure window, and this is the code that I copied here. So basically I copied all this code here and I paste it in this JavaScript code window. And then I make sure to check enabled because that turns the module on. And then if you want it on all project pages, which I don't recommend because that's all project pages, like your home page, record status dashboard, all the REDCap pages. If you just want it on the data entry pages, then you put it here for always on for data entry. And if you want it on surveys, then you turn this to always on. And if these are all set to not, if these are not set and you check all project pages, then these all get turned on. And then you can also specify a specific instrument because you can have multiple code blocks with the JavaScript injector. So if I had this functionality for this instrument, but I had some other functionality for another instrument, I could just add I could add it to a new instrument here, or I could go up here to the top and add another JavaScript snippet, which creates a whole set of another set of fields where I can enable another code block for some other functionality. So all you have to do is paste the code in here and click save. And I'm just going to hit cancel anyway. But that code now will be hooked to this instrument and these fields. And right now what you can see is that we're only targeting this one cell. And we're doing that with an ID value because the IDs have to be unique for each one of these. But let's say you wanted to do this whole row here. The way to do that is with a class value instead of an ID value. So if we go back to the designer here, and if we go back to the HTML here, you see that this class row equals 1, class row equals 1, and class row equals 1. So if I want to target a specific cell, I want to use an ID and I want to give it a unique value. But if I want multiple cells to be triggered at once, I can use a class and I can use that value multiple times. So all these three table cells have the same class. So now if I go back to our code, and I'm going to get rid of all these and just have the first one because I'll just show you the first row. Right now, so now we don't want the ID value, we want the row value. So the way you do a row value is with a period. So this # designates an ID in JavaScript. And if you want a class value, you just do a period. So period, and then the value that I put was row-1. So I'll just copy that and paste that here. So this would be the new code that I would want that would target that entire row because each one of those table data cells has this class. So if I just copy this and we go back to the JavaScript module, and if I replace this code and we go back to the regular form, if I refresh, this cell should all change. There you go. So you can see now that we can target this whole cell. These are no longer being targeted because I took out the other codes that for the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 10. I'm just showing the row 1 example. So there's multiple ways you can do this. If you want a single cell or if you want an entire row, you can also change the color. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be red. This is where you would change the color, the values. This is sort of the default value for that cell. If you wanted this, the default value that RedCap puts in, you could highlight this and go to your inspect tab, and it should give you the background color. I think it's in the span, maybe. There's a way to find it. It's in all this over here. So the background here is FO, 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 or F0 rather. So if you wanted it to just look normal, you could put F0 in here and it would be this color, and then it would only change to this color if there was something wrong. And if you need help with hexadecimal HTML color codes, there's a website that I like to use called HTML Color Codes that gives you the value that you need. So you can select any color on the slider, and it's going to give you this value that you need to whatever value you want for that color. So it's very helpful. It also gives you charts with colors, so you don't want to have to, if you don't want to have to pick a, go around and pick them. It also gives you the chart names, like if you want to see all these, you can use as values. It doesn't have to be this hex code. So if I did, let's say I did Indian red here, instead of this hex code, I could put Indian red like that. And if, let's say I did this as F0, 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 and if it's a hexadecimal, it needs to have the # on it. So if we just copy that and paste it into our JavaScript, there you go. So now this is how you can use the color code names, and these are hard coded in HTML and CSS. They're all different colors for pink, yellow, blue, the whole spectrum. So you don't have to just use the color code. You could also use the RGB code. That's a little more advanced, but it's a similar thing. So you have options. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Just one,
Okay.
uh, for those that are looking at it. You may question why I didn't do like repeating instruments for each one or use a drop down or whatever. We try to build with the client in mind. And in this case, the client was one where I felt that just using that add a new row instead of new instances would be better because they could just see at a glance, and they probably weren't going to use more than 10 different immunizations, and they could always change the date on one if it was repeated. So that's why I went with the just 10 instances and you add a new one, and it kept it a little cleaner, and I didn't have to worry about new coordinators not understanding how it worked, and everything was right in front of them. So
Yeah.
that's why it was built like that.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to see it all at once here because if you did use the repeatable instances, then you'd have to use the instance table to see them all together.
Right.
And then I don't think you would be able to you might be able to use the JavaScript injector for that, but it would be like a module on top of a module, which you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, so Michael asks, can the same objective be achieved for the field type? Begin new section with optional text.
Um,
Yeah,
the
that's more of like a static field where you don't have, I don't believe you have the rich text editor for that. And so um
you
it
can use
has more of a static color like a yellow. Excuse me, go ahead, Emmanuel. Well,
yeah, with the rich text editor, you can use it for the begin. Um, so you're saying with the color that it just defaults as, so like
yes, it'll keep the background color, which is kind of like a pale yellow.
yeah, you would have to you could target this because that's being set um by RedCap in here, I believe. You would have to find where that color is being assigned, and then you could override it um right here. So this background color, this dot, you can see here class equals header.
Okay.
RedCap is applying this class value to that header, which is then pulling in this style, all the style for this. So you can see here it says background color is that. So in the JavaScript, what you would do is uh, you could, in the design here, it's not, so you can see here that the class equals header is not applied here. But you could do something like ID equals header text. And then when this loads again, now you'll see here that this has a header, but then the paragraph tag has the header text. So you could act upon this header text here, but it's not going to do the whole table cell. If you did the header, if you use the JavaScript to change a header because it's a class, it's going to apply to any of your section headers because there's no way for us to programmatically add an ID or another class value to this table data cell because RedCap is doing that automatically in the back end. So we wouldn't be able to do this with a begin new section.
Okay. Thank you, man.
Mhm.